Morgan, welcome to the Calm Mom podcast. I'm so grateful to have you with us today. Thanks for making the time to be here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you, Michelle.
This is so great. Something that I think really prompted my exploration into nervous system work was when, as a symptom of how dysregulated I was really struggling with sleep, big time. And that was, I think it's one of those things that kind of bleeds into everything else in your life. And I know for me, then it started being, I got so anxious around bedtime and I was dreading bedtime. And that, I'm sure we'll talk about it. It probably brought on its own host of problems related to sleep. But I know I'm also not alone. And I know for so many women listening who have babies and really young kids, sleep can be hard to come by. So we want to make sure that we're at least controlling the things within our control when it comes to our sleep. So I'm grateful for this conversation we're going to have today. But before we pick your brain and you teach us all the things, just let everyone know a little bit about you and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, I got into this work of sleep because I actually had insomnia myself almost 20 years ago. And I was dependent on Ambien, a very popular sleep aid, during that 8-year stint of insomnia.
Wow.
And I was able to get off the pills. I do not recommend that anyone cold turkey themselves on the pills. Okay. Go to your provider, get a taper schedule just for any medication, FYI. Yeah. But anyway, I got off the pills and slept pretty well for years after that. And then very, very beginning of the pandemic, like 2020, March of 2020, things started to kind of go downhill again. And I got very concerned because I did not want to go down that full road of full-blown insomnia. Yeah. And I started to Google how to sleep better. And I was able to come up with some really good tips online that actually helped me get my sleep back on track. And I got so enthralled by this that I started to kind of post about it organically on Facebook. Like what I was doing. And all these people were like, gosh, I'm having trouble sleeping too. And so late in 2020, I just got this very, very sudden urge, like, you have to make this your work. You have to actually help women with their sleep. And 2 years before that, I had been going through breast cancer. And that was really a pivotal moment in my life of like, I want to actually make my life's mission helping women get healthier. At that time, I didn't know how to do that. But then once this whole sleep thing kind of fell into my lap, I was like, okay, we've got it. So ever since 2020, I started the business in 2021, spent all of 2020 pretty much studying the science of sleep. And my passion is helping women become healthier, more productive, more vibrant, and able to live their lives. And all of that happens through better sleep.
It's so important. It's so important. I love that. And thanks for sharing that part of your story. I think it's, when we listen to people who've walked it and lived it, and we understand what kind of drives part of that passion, it's really interesting and it's beautiful. We talk about insomnia, and I think, there's a lot of terms that just get thrown around. Insomnia, I have OCD, like I'm so OCD, or, I can just think of things that people say. Tell us the difference between struggling to sleep, a bad night's sleep, and having insomnia. What's the difference?
Yeah, great question. So insomnia, as defined clinically, is having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up too early at least 3 nights a week.
Okay.
To be chronic, it needs to be 3 months or more. Acute is less than 3 months. In addition to that, there has to be some kind of just daytime dysfunction or feeling unrefreshed, unsatisfied with your sleep. And so that's the clinical definition. What I really like to stress to people is that it's very normal. It's part of the human condition, very, very normal to have bad nights of sleep every so often. That we're just never going to get around that. Even the best sleeper is going to have a rough night. So that's really the distinguishing feature. So if you have a bad night of sleep every month, you probably don't need to go to the next level and get, some kind of intervention. But if you are struggling 3 nights a week, I definitely see the need for some kind of extra help or intervention to deal with that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And for the most part, would you say that whether you're having a hard time falling, like whether it's actual clinical insomnia or you're just not sleeping well once in a while, good sleep hygiene is helpful regardless?
Yeah, I think good sleep hygiene is helpful for everybody.
Yeah.
The thing with insomnia that's interesting, though, is that a lot of people with insomnia have already done all of the sleep hygiene.
Okay.
And it's not enough. In fact, they will actually use sleep hygiene as the placebo arm in studies with insomnia because it's not that effective. And that it's frustrating because people who have insomnia, as a rule, tend to be kind of rule followers, or just kind of like high achievers, doers.
Yep.
And when they understand that the sleep hygiene isn't working, it can be very frustrating.
It's frustrating
because they're doing all the things that they can do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
It's like I'm doing all the things and I'm still awake. Let's talk about some of those things. So for people listening that aren't sleeping well, but they probably don't have very good sleep hygiene and they'd like to try to improve that before seeing if this is a bigger issue that might require outside help. What are some of the biggest factors that they can start to really be intentional about that will help them to sleep better and wake up actually feeling rested?
Yeah. The things I'm about to share aren't always like the standard sleep hygiene, but these are things that are within our grasp. So if I was kind of struggling with my sleep, but I wasn't yet in the realm of insomnia, the things that I would start off with would be, number one, having a consistent wake up time.
Okay.
That is incredibly important because that consistent wake up time really strengthens your circadian rhythm. And when you have that consistent wake up time, what you end up seeing by default is almost a very consistent bedtime, because you become sleepy around the same time each night if you're getting up at the same time each morning. So we have this sleep pressure chemical called adenosine, and it takes about 16, 17 hours to build up, at which point it has to be released by sleep.
Okay.
So I would say start with a consistent wake time. And I like this tip because it's something we can all control. Okay. We can all get an alarm clock. I mean, it may not be pleasant to wake up at the same time every morning, but we have control over that.
Yeah. Does it matter so much what time? Like for people who are listening, does it matter what time they wake up, or is it just to try to be consistent in that wake up time?
A great question. It really doesn't matter what time, but you want to be consistent. So when we're talking about kind of fixing our sleep and kind of recalibrating our sleep system, if you will, we want to also consider our chronotype. Okay. So if you're an early morning lark, 5, 6 a.m. is going to be probably a good wake up time for you. But if you're more of a night owl, you might need to sleep till like 8, 9. So it really varies according to your chronotype. The other thing that I would probably consider doing if I wanted to work on getting better sleep is I would really prioritize morning sunlight.
Okay.
And that is the sunlight that happens close to sunrise. So sunrise and then a little bit thereafter. And what that does, it also strengthens your circadian rhythm. You want to make sure, though, that when you step outside, you want to 15 minutes would be a good time to do that, the amount of time. You don't want to have your sunglasses on or anything covering your eyes. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because when your eyes make contact with that natural light, there is a signal that gets sent to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your circadian pacemaker. And that sends off this beautiful cascade of hormonal and neurotransmitters firing away. So any kind of residual melatonin from the night before gets shut down. Your cortisol gets boosted for energy. Your serotonin gets boosted for mood. So you don't want to block all that by covering your eyes.
Right.
So those are probably the top 2 things that I would say to start with. Now, and then there's some other sleep hygiene things that are a lot more commonly talked about, and that is not eating too close to bed.
Yep.
So you really want to allow 2 to 3 hours between your last bite of food and the time you go to bed, because your body is going to ultimately prioritize the digestion before sleep. So you want to get all that digestion happening before you hit the pillow. And then also you really want to consider your caffeine consumption too,
Yes.
because there are a lot of people out there who are getting that afternoon slump, 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they head on over to Starbucks and get their fix of caffeine.
Yeah.
And what we need to consider is that caffeine has like a 10 to 12 hour quarter life. So theoretically, if you had a cup of coffee at 2 o'clock, it could still be in your system by the time you go to bed.
Right.
So what I really recommend for everyone is to, cut off their caffeine by no later than 12 noon.
Okay.
Right. We all have different speeds at which we clear caffeine. It's genetically determined, but you don't really know that unless you get a genetic test. So I kind of go on the assumption that we're all going to, better be safe than sorry. Let's all kind of assume we have a slower rate of that caffeine clearance. And then another really good tip for sleep hygiene, I don't think this one's talked about it enough, but it should be, is exercise, daily exercise, at least 20 minutes. We have a plethora of studies out there showing that exercise helps our sleep efficiency, helps us fall asleep faster, helps us sleep deeper. There's actually a meta-analysis of 13 different studies showing that exercise helps deepen our sleep, get more deep sleep, which is like the juiciest, most wonderful part of our sleep is when our brains really get that regenerative boost. So
wow, that's so helpful. It's interesting that you mentioned that because I'm experiencing it right now. My sister invited me to run the Brooklyn Marathon with her in November.
Wow.
And I've like run as part of my exercise routine, but when we lived in Miami, we just moved to Houston, but in Miami I had a treadmill in the garage, and I would put the overhead light on and I would just run on there at whatever time I could fit in kind of between my day, and then be on with it. But now that we've moved to Houston, the last 3-ish weeks, I've gotten in the habit of getting up and I go for a run around 6 a.m. So I catch the sunrise, and then on my way back, the sun is up. So I'm getting the early morning sunlight, right? And I'm getting that movement in at the same time. And I've noticed a difference in my sleep. I was telling my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like impacting me in ways I wouldn't even have thought. Like I'm even sleeping better.
I can't tell you how much I love hearing that, Michelle, because you're evidence that this stuff works.
Yeah.
And I love it when you can do the habit stacking like you've done. You've combined your movement with your sunlight. That's beautiful.
Okay, that's so helpful. Okay, I wrote down a bunch of things while you were speaking that I want to pick your brain about more. I know nothing about chronotypes, and this is so interesting to me. So you mentioned the lark, and I think that's what I am, because I've always been someone who naturally just wakes up early without an alarm, and I'm ready to go, and I feel rested through the day, and I also go to bed very early. I think if you would put me against a lot of other adults. But that's just how I'm wired. And I work with so many women who are like, I want to get up before my kids. Like I want to get up like you do, but it's just like takes everything in me. And then I'm dragging all day and I hate it. And I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, maybe they just have a different chronotype. And if you're listening now, maybe this can like release a ton of guilt or gaslighting if you're not someone who gets up early as easily as other people. But I'm wondering if you could speak to that and explain some of the chronotypes to us.
Yeah. So the chronotypes there's actually a couple different chronotypes. There's the morning lark and there's the night owl.
Okay.
There's a sleep doctor named Dr. Bruce who actually kind of has his own sort of classification of chronotypes. The dolphin, the bear, the lion, and I'm forgetting the other one, but you'll see maybe those sometimes talked about.
Yeah.
And essentially, like I would say 20% of people are like the morning larks, 20% of the people are the more extreme night owls, and then the rest of the people are kind of somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Right? And one of the ways you can actually determine your own chronotype is by going to a quiz online. It's free. It's called the Morningness Eveningness Questionnaire, or the MEQ for short. It's kind of a tongue twister. And you will be given a series of questions to ask that sort of speak to your preferences on what time you would do things. Okay. And at the end, it will give you your chronotype. It'll sort of say strong morning or strong evening or moderate. And that will give you really the answer to your chronotype question.
Fascinating.
But what I encourage people to do, though, is try to lean into your chronotype as far as like your daily patterns. Like you and I sound like we're wired similarly. We get up early on our own. We have, a lot of energy in the morning. We go to bed early.
Yeah.
So people like us, we may be better served to get our deep work done in the morning.
Yes.
Right. All of the important tasks I really want to make sure I get done before noon. Yep. Because around 4:00 I start to kind of tap out.
Yep. My brain just kind of shuts off.
So you've got that. And then if you are on the opposite side and you're a night owl, you may really find that you're getting a lot of creative inspiration in the evening to do some work or some projects. And so you might want to lean into that. The problem that happens often in society, though, is that we are sort of set up as a society to be catering to the early birds.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Think about corporate world. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in the corporate world. I've been in there plenty of years, and I'll never go back, but that's an aside. But,
same.
You think about like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. meetings.
Yep.
Every week, every day, or whatever. And that is not really the most conducive time for many night owls to be on in a meeting. They may not be fully awake. So there's sort of a movement now, and I a huge supporter of this is in a workplace having management really take assessment of people's different chronotypes and try as best they can to kind of meet people in the middle. So instead of 8 a.m. meetings, maybe move them to noon, because that's kind of when both chronotypes are probably at a good spot, right?
Yeah.
So we have some work to do as a society around that chronotype
Wow, that's
issue.
so fascinating. I'm going to find that quiz for you guys, and I'll link it in the show notes so you can take it. But I think that's good information to have, right? And then use it to inform maybe how we set up our days and explain also why maybe our body might not be on board with the things that we want it to, and just let ourselves release that.
Right.
Yeah, cool. I also you mentioned caffeine, and you mentioned adenosine. How do you, is that?
Adenosine, yeah.
Adenosine. And I have encountered a lot of people who are under the assumption that caffeine gives them energy, right? And they need to take caffeine to give them energy. And my understanding is that's not actually how caffeine functions. But it's more, so you're shaking your head. Can you teach us a little bit about the myth or the fallacy that like, I need to drink caffeine so I get more energy, and maybe what a better approach would be if we're finding ourselves dragging? Well,
caffeine is sort of a fake energy source, and I am not anti-caffeine. In fact, I've seen a slew of content this week for some reason that's just slamming coffee. They're like, they're like, caffeine should be a drug, like, it should be not legalized, but like monitored, like a thing. Like, and I was like, what? Yeah. I think caffeine gets a bad rap in a lot of situations, but I think it's all about how we're using it. If we wake up in the morning and we enjoy a nice cup of coffee, and we're not like relying, and I do too. I mean, I love it. It's such a beautiful ritual. It's just so cozy. But if you are relying on that coffee all throughout the day, that's a sign of something a little bit deeper that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
So what I often will tell my clients is that we typically have this little circadian dip in the early afternoon. 1 to 3 is usually when we have it.
Yeah.
And in our society, we are kind of like expected to plow through, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Other cultures, they have a siesta, right? During that time, because they're honoring that natural circadian dip around that time in the early afternoon. Yeah. Very brilliant. We somehow haven't gotten the memo, but in any case, instead of going to, the Starbucks or whatever, my recommendation for people when they have that energy dip is to do one of two things.
Okay.
Depending on your own schedule and your own lifestyle, it would be maybe to take a 20-minute power nap.
Yeah.
You're going to get a little cognitive boost, a little energy boost, but you're not going to end up with that grogginess after the nap, that sleep inertia. So you've got that option, or there's also the option of just going outside for a walk. Yes. Like that sunshine. Yeah, that sunshine is actually an energy source for you, and the movement as well. So whatever you can do to sort of get yourself over the hump of that like little energy slump, early afternoon without the caffeine would serve you very well.
Okay, that's so helpful. I noticed that too. I would love to be someone who naps in the afternoon. I just I'm believing it's going to happen, but I find that I have a hard time falling asleep in that amount of time to make it work for my schedule. But man, if I chug a glass of water and then go for a walk, I'll come back and I feel so much better. Like that seems to really help me. I love that. I want to also talk about alcohol. Because I think there are a lot of people, or that's also something that's perpetuated, is like, oh, that glass of wine that really helps me fall asleep, or when I just have a cocktail before bed, and then I can kind of like exhale, take the edge off, and I know I fall asleep a lot better. And that might be true, but I know it has a huge impact on the quality of sleep that we're getting. So can you teach us a little bit about that?
Yes, you're exactly right. So alcohol is like the most commonly used sleep aid in the world.
Okay.
Because it does have that sedative effect and it can help really relax us. It can help kind of make us more sleepy. But then you pay for that on the back end, right?
Okay.
Because what it does is it cuts off your REM phase of sleep during the first part of the night. And then you get something called REM rebound in the early morning. And what you might notice if you've been drinking is you might have a lot of early morning wake ups.
Okay.
So that fragmented sleep definitely cuts down on the quality of your sleep. And they've done a study showing that like up to one glass of alcohol for a woman can reduce your sleep quality by up to like 38%.
Whoa.
One glass. And then for 2 and 3, you can imagine that the quality goes down even more. So that's a lot of sleep quality to leave on the table.
Seriously.
So I'm not, I never, with my clients, I'm never like, you must cut out alcohol, but I really try to help people work strategically around alcohol. And, I kind of, I'm a proponent of happy hour versus nightcap. So if you want to,
I started having a glass of wine while I make dinner instead of like after dinner. And I noticed the difference if I'm going to do it.
It makes a huge difference. So having that drink on the early end, you really want to ideally allow like 3 hours for that alcohol to clear your system.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm a sleep tracking kind of gal, and I have tested this time after time. I can't cheat it. I will see the difference if I have a drink too late. It will really impact my sleep, my heart rate, my temperature. It might make me sweaty. I mean, it's not worth it to me.
Yeah, exactly. If you're struggling with sleep or if you're feeling lethargic or whatever it is, why not just remove something that has a huge impact, right?
Right.
You mentioned tracking your sleep. Is that something that you think everybody should be doing? Should we be doing that? Should we be wearing something that helps us to do that? Or what are your thoughts? When do you recommend that?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of tracking for the right person. So there's a couple types of tracking. There is the good old fashioned paper pencil tracking. So I think that that's accessible for everyone because you can just go to Google, you can download a sleep tracker, sleep diary, sleep journal. You can get one for free and then fill it out yourself. If you want to kind of take a look at your habits and see what kinds of things are impacting your sleep negatively. Next level is the devices. So the Aura, the Whoop, the Fitbit, all of those things. Those come at a price, they're an investment. And I think they're great for the kind of person who really wants to improve their sleep. They're an optimizer and they're able to take the data that they see on their dashboard and actually apply it to their behaviors. Yeah. So in other words, if you have an Aura or a Whoop or whatever, and you clearly see that alcohol brings my sleep score down. And you actually make changes around that behavior. You reduce your alcohol. That's perfect. But if you don't make any changes based on the data, what is the point, right? Where I see sleep trackers not doing so well are for people who have insomnia, which is most of my clientele. And what sleep trackers tend to do with people who have insomnia is it tends to make them a little bit more anxious about their sleep. Yeah. So if you are having a lot of anxiety about sleep, and then, for example, you see like a low REM score or a low deep score, you might go, oh my gosh, what's going on? I need to worry. I need something else to worry about. Yeah. So for those folks, I usually say, look, let's get your sleep straight. Let's get it on an even keel and then look into a sleep tracker. Now, then there's sort of a middle ground, which I've kind of explored from time to time myself, is wearing the tracker every day, but not actually looking at the data, but once a week.
Okay, smart. Okay.
That way you're not kind of wrapped up in the daily headlines of what you have, but you're seeing it on a more kind of, you take a step back and you can see it, the trends. Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's helpful. I have so many questions. I'm just going to like rattle them off. Another thing that made a big difference for me is like, we hear so much about blue light. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I know I shouldn't be looking at my phone before I go to bed. I think we all know this, but for me, maybe it's just the way I'm wired. Maybe it's like the attorney in me, or it's just like a stubbornness. It wasn't until I actually understood the science of why, like what happens in my body as a result of taking in that blue light, that I was like, oh, okay, I'm actually going to like be intentional about my blue light or my screen time before bed. So can you tell us a little bit, like teach us a little bit about what is happening in our body as a result of that blue light?
Sure. Yeah. So when you are looking at blue light at night, you're basically telling your body that it's daytime, and you're suppressing any type of melatonin suppression that might be happening. And the melatonin is the hormone that prepares you for sleep. So you're dampening that effect of the melatonin by having that blue light exposure. And then another thing I think not everyone realizes is that blue light also impacts our blood sugar and our metabolism.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, it has some effects that are beyond just sleep, right? So they've done studies where people have looked at a lot of blue light at night, and then their blood glucose was really high in the morning, right? Which seems kind of strange, right?
Yeah.
But it has, some pretty gruesome effects if you really kind of let it go, like let the blue light shine everywhere. So I'm a really big fan of blue light blocking glasses. I'm a fan of turning off those big LED lights that a lot of us have in modern homes, the ones that are attached to the ceiling, and switching those for like a table lamp, or like even like at night, honestly, I will light a candle and turn the lights off.
I love that.
And it creates a little bit of ambiance, but it also protects my melatonin production.
Amazing. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
So good.
But you also want to be careful though with the blue light blocking glasses, because there are a lot of them out there that are advertised as blue blocking, and they are kind of a scam. They don't actually block the blue light. You want to make sure that you buy from a reputable company and that you're buying lenses that are orange. Okay. So anything that's super clear is not going to be able to block out the blue light.
Oh, that's interesting you say that, because I wear glasses 99% of the time. And whenever I go to like the eyeglass store to get them, they're always like, do you want, I don't know what it is, like a blue light filter, blue light blocking? And I'm like, yeah, of course. But they look, I don't know if they're doing anything.
Yeah.
I noticed yours have like a yellow.
Yeah. The ones that I'm wearing are actually blue light blocking glasses. They're kind of, I think they're called circadian therapy glasses maybe, but essentially what they're doing is they're blocking out the harmful blue rays, and they're allowing some in, because during the daytime, we actually want to see a certain degree of blue light to keep us alert and awake. Yeah. But this helps kind of mitigate having too much of the blue light.
So are those prescription that you're wearing or no?
Well, they're not. I ordered them. I got them as readers. So you can just, you can put in your prescription if you want, but you don't have to get them at the eye doctor.
And do you wear them all day, or do you just wear them at certain times of the day?
I wear them when I'm on the computer. Okay. When I'm doing any work on the computer or on the phone. When I take my walks, though, no glasses, because I want all of that good natural light in my eyes.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's so interesting. As we talk about blue light, I was thinking about people who either like, one, you have really young children, so you're waking up in the middle of the night to feed them or to attend to them or whatever it is, or people who are waking up during the night and really struggling to go back to sleep. I think we can get into a bad habit of like, all right, I've been laying here for 5 minutes, I'm not falling back asleep, and I grab my phone. Obviously, we know why that's not a good habit now. You've taught us. But what are some things we should be doing maybe if we wake up in the middle of the night and find that we're having a hard time falling back asleep?
Yeah. So the middle of the night wake ups are probably the most common complaint that I see about sleep. It's very frustrating. So my recommendation is if you are in bed and you start to get agitated, you start to kind of get this like stressed feeling, anxious.
Yeah, that's what I would get. I would like watch the clock change and be like, yes. Oh my gosh, 4 more hours till I have to start my day. Oh my gosh, 3 more hours.
I'm glad you mentioned the clock, Michelle, because when I had insomnia, that was my worst enemy. I had the clock next to me and I never even thought to take the clock away, but that would have probably helped me tremendously because it doesn't make any doesn't help you to know the time. It only makes you more anxious to know the time. So I always have all of my clients remove like the clock faces from their bedroom because I don't want them to. We can actually sometimes train ourselves to kind of keep waking up at the same time. Because people are like, why do I wake up at 3:11 every night? Well, because you're kind of training your brain. You're anticipating it. Yeah. A lot of people will notice if they remove the clock, the wake ups kind of start to dissipate. Amazing. Interestingly enough. Wow. But if you are finding yourself tossing and turning, you really need to get out of bed because you never want to associate your bed with stress and anxiety. And so what I recommend people do is go to another room, go make sure the light is dim in that room and do something that is calm and relaxing, preferably not on a screen. Mm-hmm. So I like to have people kind of prepare ahead of time, like a little basket. I call it the bedtime basket or the bedroom basket of things that they can just lean in on when they need to pass the time before they get sleepy. And so that could be reading magazines, crossword puzzles, adult coloring books. I even had a client, I love this idea. She actually did handwritten greeting cards for her friends, like the old fashioned kinds that no one sends anymore. Yeah. And I'm like, how beautiful is that? Like your friends now get, a nice little handwritten note in the mail from you. That's and awesome. You're doing something to pass the time. So anything like that. I mean, there's certain kind of gray area situations where people want to meditate using an app and they need their phone. That's not ideal because it requires a little bit of discipline on your part because once the phone's in your hand, are you going to have the discipline to like not scroll Instagram? Right. If you have the discipline, great, but it's a slippery slope. So try not to use the screen if possible. Yeah, that's so helpful. I love all those ideas too. That's really good. This is great. I'm believing that a lot of women listening who've been struggling with sleep are going to have some really practical things that they can start to put in place today and then watch and see. For the people who do that, I'm assuming it's probably, slightly different for everyone, but how long does it take for some of these habits to really start to have an impact and for us to see an improvement in our sleep? Yeah, that's a great question. They can happen pretty quickly, for a lot of people. But, the clients that I get often have had insomnia for years, years and years and years. And so when you have that type of deep-seated insomnia, you're really entrenched in a lot of habits and behaviors and attitudes and mindsets. Those can take a while to unravel. Okay. So if you've got like true clinical insomnia that has a lot of anxiety attached to it, it may take months. But for a lot of people, the changes can happen very quickly, within a couple of weeks. So your mileage may vary, but there are definitely so many things that we can do free tools that I've shared, the sunlight, the consistency part. We all have the ability to do that. Yeah, that's so good. So you guys, if you're listening to this, choose one or two of those things, right? And start to put them into your daily routine. You'll start to notice a difference, not only in your sleep quality, but then your mood and your energy levels and all of the things that flow from that. And then you can continue to refine, right? And tweak as you see needed. But this has been so helpful. I'm so grateful that you're doing this work because there's so many people who aren't getting good quality sleep for a lot of reasons that, like you said, are within our control. So just having the awareness of the things that are having an impact on our sleep is so huge. So thanks for putting that information out there for everyone listening who they want to keep learning from you and connecting with you. Where can they find you? Yes, you can find me online, morganadamswellness.com. I have a free mini course that you can sign up for. And there's also the opportunity to sign up for a free consultation on my website.
Okay.
I'm pretty active on Instagram. My handle is morganadams.wellness. Shoot me a DM, say hi. I love chatting about sleep, so don't be a stranger.
That's great. I will link that all in the show notes for you guys so you can find Morgan, connect with her, pick up her free resources. And honestly, if sleep is something that you've been struggling with, like, do not put that off. Do not kick that can down the road. Book that free consultation with her. Take her up on that, because that's one of those things that, the sooner you can get that taken care of, you're just it's such a huge investment, I think, in all other parts of your life, and big picture in your overall health going forward. So thanks again for being with us. It was such a joy.
Thank you, Michelle. It was great being with you.
Perfect.
I want to take a photo for Instagram.
Okay, I'm going to do the same. Good idea. 1, 2.
Yay. That was fun. And I didn't have too many crazy noises in the background.
No, it was perfect. My internet was good, and
yes, no snafus. I wanted to let you know that I have something called a podcaster referral program.
Okay.
And this is basically a thank you for podcasters. So if somebody books a call with me, like one of those consultations, and they list you or your podcast as a referral source, and they become a one-to-one client, I send you $100 as a token of gratitude. Wow. There's nothing you need to do on your end. When they sign up for the call, there's a field that says, where'd you hear about me? And so that's how I track. But I feel it's important to, give back to the podcaster who promotes somebody, so I appreciate you and just being so patient with me during my technological break. That's right. We got it done. Yay. Sure. Okay. That sounds great. All right. Thank you. Have a good day. Okay. Bye.